Thorin, affectionately referred to as the eSports historian, is fast gaining popularity in the Counter-Strike global offensive scene. His strong and unfiltered viewpoints sometimes have a polarizing effect, but his insight is not to be disregarded. His journalistic endeavors have given him high regard in many different esports scenes, and the range on which he writes is expansive. Hi Thorin, thanks for taking the time to sit down with us here today. How are things?
Yeah, not too bad. Just wondering what you're going to ask me today.
All right, well, let's just get started then. So speaking of DreamHack, you got this position at the Stockholm Invitational. It's very, very soon as one of the experts. And do you agree with this classification? They tend to tag people, and it's definitely popular debate in the community.
You mean just the title expert?
Yeah, do you consider yourself an expert, or do you think DreamHack are kind of classifying it wrong?
I mean, I could see some argument for if everyone on those panels are experts. That's why it might be a problem, because if they want it to be like an expert panel or something, then there might be issues, because some people, maybe that's not like the role they've played before, or maybe they're just a community guy like Scoots or BSL or whoever they are. It might, I think expert and analyst are pretty interchangeable. It should mean the same thing pretty much. I mean, I'd consider myself an expert. Like, that's actually something people might not understand, is that when I have opinions and they seem quite forthright, as though I don't care what other people think, that's not the case at all. If other people have an interesting opinion, I'll use that and I'll inform that about what I think about the game. But I've been thinking about and playing Counter-Strike for 13 years. Like, I've watched more Counter-Strike than most pro players you ever heard of. Even like Neo, Forrest, I've probably watched and played more CS than they have. So I don't automatically think, oh, they must know more than me about the game. I've had such a grasp of the different scenes and watched so many different games that I'm willing to trust that my processes of how to think about the game, or how to break it down, or how to analyze like what can happen, what should happen, why did that happen, are going to be on a high enough level that I can trust that there's some validity if I think something. I'm not just thinking it up out of nowhere. And so that, in that sense, I think for me at least, I'd call myself an expert. I'd probably say, well, here's a great line for you. I think I know more about Counter-Strike than anyone who's ever lived. So take that for what you will. Obviously, it doesn't have to be correct, but based on my experience, it doesn't have to mean I know more, like I know everything that everyone else knows. That's definitely the case. But in my own particular way of how I've broken the game down, the direction I've gone in, no one's gone as far in my direction as I have, okay?
I think that's a fair answer. Is it a role you're going to take up more often? Is it something you want to do more, or how are you feeling about that?
The thing with that type of role actually is I almost don't even think of it as work, because like actually when I first did CS 1.6 casting, it wasn't because I thought I was some super expert or whatever, and I would be the best at that role. It's just because I got the offer as like a stand-in for one event, and I thought to myself, like all the times I've watched casting and been like, this is just shit. Like I hate this style. Like they're not giving me information or info. Well, if I know that information, I know that info, and I have an idea of how I think it should be done, then why don't I do it? Like, why don't I take this chance now and try and put into practice what I'm saying and see if it's actually possible to do? And then when I did it, I found like, oh, this is actually quite a fun way to do it. Like it's a different way to think about the game, because when you're just sitting sort of consuming the game, you break it down in a very different way. So it's kind of like an interactive process. Like you're taking in the information, but then you're having to process it back out again while you're doing the cast. So it can be quite fun. It's quite engaging to do. I think in terms of this expert analyst thing, that's probably a lot more appealing to me. Like there was actually a point where if it had just been people asking me to cast, I was probably going to start just saying no each time. Like I would tell people the last few times, like it's probably not that good an idea to hire me. Like I'll do it if you want, but people in general don't really like engage with my personality when I do straight up casting, just color casting. Like they don't like it if I put in too many jokes or if I'm too harsh on the players or whatever. But I think in an analysis role, it's more succinct. There's like a very set position of where I'm supposed to talk about the things. And so I think my style works better there. And so to me, it's actually just fun. Like I don't even think of it as work. It's more like I think about Counter-Strike anyway. I watch Counter-Strike anyway. Here's an opportunity where I can be the guy, okay, who gives some context to like these players, these teams that you're going to watch now. And hopefully that enhances the broadcast for everyone. Then it's not a case of like, oh, I'd rather like, oh, Lurpus did that color commentary. Because you can have Lurpus do the color commentary and I can do the analysis role. So I think everyone's in the right kind of place right now.
So is this a format you think which is a huge step in the right direction, or is there a way that you change it? Of course, it was kind of a completely new thing that I think this was the first time we saw that in DreamHack Winter 2013. So what do you think about the format in general?
I think it's much, much better because there's actually been a huge problem in the last couple of years in esports casting where they've been trying to figure out how you break down all the different areas. Because the reason why this applies to Counter-Strike especially is like in other games, okay, like StarCraft 2, etc. When they would be casting the game, they have downtime within the game itself, like while you're massing your army or while one guy's like waiting for the other army to get across the map. You have a bit of time to talk about like the strategy or what he did wrong there or what he can do later. You have this like time component that doesn't exist in Counter-Strike and to some degree doesn't exist in Quake either, where the action can be so constant, like something is happening all the time. And usually that will in some way be worth talking about. And so unfortunately, the downtime between rounds in Counter-Strike isn't enough time. Like those like 20 seconds aren't enough for me to break down a whole round that just happened and then talk about what's going to happen now. And so the analysis aspect allows us to kind of put everyone in a set role. Like the casters just cast the game that's going on now. Analysis, we'll give the post-game stuff afterwards, and we'll give you some stuff leading into it later on. And then we have interviews separately. And so I think it's a much better way to break the game down, especially because like what I referred to there, like you can't give people, one of the things I always thought I did really well in my color casting was I would try to fit in lots of contextual info. So when someone did something interesting, I'd say something like, oh, he's quite famous for playing that round because you're playing that position because, you know, in this other team he was in 6 years ago, that's where he actually got his start was as like a player on that site. And he used to play this role and he used to have a teammate who helped him. If you go into all that, that's really good info. But usually you have to hope it's like an eco round where I can talk about that. Otherwise I'm going to be talking over the game. But if I could tell you that before the game starts and then you have it in your mind and you see it in the game, okay, oh yeah, I can see that role that he was talking about there, or I can see the way they use this player. I think it will enhance most viewers' experience of the game, especially the more casual ones, but without necessarily detracting from what they want in the casting, I think.
I completely agree. I got to say, you've always been vocal on the state of the game, and that's also been something that has been a critical aspect of whether the game's entertaining or not. Over the last year, we've seen many changes. So we recently just got a new weapon, the CZ75 Auto. Got some physics changes, some weapon rebalances. What are your thoughts on the current gameplay?
I mean, the big problem with the updates they make is that people always, I've noticed this weird trend, considering people think that Counter-Strike fans are really critical. I notice initially they're always in favor of whatever the update is, usually because, I mean, I'll give you the analogy, okay? Think about people who in FPS games would always change their sensitivity. The first week that you change the sensitivity, you're always going to be like, oh, this is way better, man. Yeah, I'm getting loads of extra kills I don't normally get. That's because in that scenario, okay, you might actually be getting kills that you wouldn't because say you like put the speed up a little bit. Now you'll get like a certain kill that's faster. But in the long run, when it evens out, now you might find, oh, actually, maybe I'm a better low sensitivity player. Now I don't have the consistency or I missed something here and there. So I think you have to wait a little bit. Like I'd say probably changes should only be done every, I'd say like 2 to 3 months. And ideally, to really know if the changes are good, I have to see it in a competitive environment. Like a good example is what happened to the org recently is that people were saying, oh, it's totally overpowered and whatnot. Well, yeah, you could say that in the public server, but you only really knew that when you saw that game that took place between H2K and ESC, where they agreed not to use the org. Then someone used it by accident, like, yeah, okay, Delpan, sure. And then someone used it by accident, and so then everyone started using it, and then it did just like ruin the game completely because it was clearly overpowered, and if you just bought it, you could like almost effectively win the round. So in that sort of a scenario, that was the perfect laboratory to really know that it was overpowered, you know. Whereas if some guy uses it in a public server, like how good is he? How good are the opponents he's playing against? Do they even know what that weapon does? Do they know how to avoid it? Like I need pro players to do stuff before I know if it's imbalanced, because the good thing about pro players is it's their job to find what is even slightly imbalanced and abuse the fuck out of it to win games because they're pros, you know. That's why in StarCraft, if someone finds a little strategy, they'll go completely nuts on it, like these Korean guys, until it gets nerfed. Well, that's like what we need in every area of the game. That's why if it was up to me, I'd probably, if I was Valve, I'd have something like 2 versions of the game. One is like a test version that all the pros get to play in on a separate level and give their feedback from. And then we only take the things that aren't too crazy or aren't too out of whack and put them into the real game. Like I think to just put it straight into the real game is kind of a bit risky. Because for example, let's say the movement changes, okay, were really radical, and then they come out just before EMS Katowice. Like that isn't what happened, but imagine it was. Then all of a sudden, some team who've been on top and then they've been practicing all this time and maybe suddenly certain strategies don't work, or maybe somehow some other team, that one change just totally benefits them and they win the whole tournament. Like in history, no one's going to remember that movement change, okay? But in the minds of people who watched it, there'll always be this little asterisk like, oh yeah, but that, of course, that tournament was bullshit because, you know, they did this one thing before and then they changed it back afterwards, but, you know, that doesn't count. And so I think for the integrity of the game, you need like more of a smooth transition, and ideally with like experts along the way helping you out.
Yeah, thinking about Brewdor actually, just a balance. Like if you want to look into balance, just look at the history of Brewdor. And you, well, you know, you're a big Brewdor fan yourself. Looking at CS:GO right now, do you think there is anything that people aren't talking about that they should be talking about? Is there something that's just completely that you want to change that isn't getting any attention?
I mean, funnily enough, the biggest issue is the issue that every pro mentions. But I see, this is one of these things, okay? People think I'm super critical and like I'm really rude and I'm anti-developers. Like I'm anti-Riot Games, I'm anti-Blizzard, I'm anti-Valve. That's not true at all. It's just that from getting to know them and from investigating them behind the scenes, I think the way they present themselves publicly isn't in any way aligned with how they actually are in private. So they publicly will always present this image, Valve is included in this, of like, we really care what the community thinks. We really want to know what you guys think. We're trying to fix the game for you. Meanwhile, in private, you can have discussions with pros and you can talk to them. And there's certain things where they either just don't get it or they're not interested in getting it, like they're actively ignorant, or they think you're just wrong. And so as a result, the certain a famous example in CSGO would be everyone has said we need to get rid of the peaker's advantage. And I'm not an expert on the engine, but as far as I know, the peaker's advantage comes from the way the netcode is done in CSGO. So that in theory, it's better in the game, right? That you can, the way that the prediction works essentially means that if you come out of the corner, you sort of see the opponent slightly before he sees you, even though that sounds counterintuitive. But the reason why that's a side effect of this prediction is that it was intended to allow you to play on higher ping, which is good, obviously, because actually CS had a real problem where people in Sweden who had 5 ping, now in a normal game, okay, 20 ping doesn't sound that bad, but the difference between 20 ping and 5 ping in CS 1.6 was huge. Like you would get destroyed if you were equal level and they had 5 ping and you had 20. So having the higher means that now maybe I could play you and I have 30 ping and you have 50 ping and it might still be reasonably close. So I think you need like a combination between the two, which is have like an online mode that's using this prediction that's really good. Great, let's do that. Let's have an offline mode for tournaments though, or an offline mode for really low ping, like below 10 ping, where we turn all that prediction shit off and it's like the old style, because the peaker's advantage is the main thing that ruins CSGO. Because what happens is, first of all, it punishes positional play, because it means that taking up a perfect position, I will get the surprise factor on you, but it's almost like the game is evening that up a bit, where if you just run out randomly, if you're a really skilled player as well, you can make up that gap too much. Whereas in CS 1.6, like the positional advantage was there for a good reason, to punish people who didn't play positionally. And so the reason why I think that's the main thing to change is because that feeds into everything else. Like it's the reason why, here's the bizarre thing, okay, CSGO is a super CT-sided game where almost every half either is CT-sided on all the maps, or it's still possible to even win CT side just because of how the game works. Well, that doesn't make sense, okay? Why would it be CT-sided if it has a peaker's advantage? Because the terrorist's always peaking, right? Yeah, but here's the thing. Even though people win all those CT rounds, tons of maps, people do take bomb sites. In fact, people take bomb sites sometimes more than they did in 1.6 on maps like Train, etc., which are really CT-sided maps. So the terrorist's using his peaker's advantage and he gets the bomb down, okay? But now you have to realize now the peaker's advantage goes to the CT. That's why on Inferno, people retake B 24/7. They're taking that shit way too easily. On CS, on Train, people can retake the site super easily. The whole point of how it worked in 1.6 with the positional advantage is, okay, you're the CT, you have the positional advantage on me now. So if on Train, it's going to be really hard for me to get in the site and get the bomb down. But once I have the bomb down, now the positional advantage transfers to me. And now I can hold a site, like in a site on Train, with maybe 2 people. You might have 4 people. But now I have a position to hold it. I'd also add in just another side factor that I think is key that people don't mention enough, which is that the maps don't have, because they don't have such a boosting element like 1.6 did, they don't have as many places you can hide on them. So for example, a map like Inside on Train. On Inside Train, you could go up the trains, you could hide under the trains. So there was like maybe 20 places to hide on the inner site. Whereas in CSGO, you can't go under trains. So there's just these trains that go up, the upper area and the back. So it's basically like 5 places you could be. And so unfortunately, if you have the numbers disadvantage, they come in just looking at all those places, and you're not going to be under the train here and shoot him in his back when he goes past. So it puts in a whole new dynamic to the game that, again, I think the key thing here is, I'm not even talking about like skill or changing a gun or it being too imbalanced. the reason why you want positional play to be encouraged is because it encourages thinking, it encourages team play. Because if me and you use positional play, two of us could outskill four guys. Not outskill like directly, but beat them by having superior positioning, getting the jump on them, surprising them, keeping them off guard. And you want the game to be possible where you don't just win based on who headshots who. You want other factors to play into it, because that way it's not just a random or just based on streaks of skill.
Yeah, I mean, we're actually we're coming close to the end of the interview now. I want to ask just one last question, and this is actually going to be something we've talked about before in private, and it's to do with coaching. And let's say you get to pick. You can handpick your talents and you can put them together in a gaming house, and your sole job, your sole purpose in the world is to make them the best CSGO team the world has seen. So what do you do? How do you do it? How does it work?
I mean, this is something I've thought about, because I mean, this won't break any confidences because I won't give any names. But there was actually a scenario in League of Legends and in CS 1.6 where I had two really big teams come and ask me if I would be either a coach outright, as in CS, they wanted me to actually help them with the tactics and the anti-stratting and stuff like that. And in League of Legends, I don't know much about League of Legends, the actual raw game. So they wanted me to be more like a mentor figure, like to tell them like how to structure the practice or have conversations with players about their mentality on the game and stuff. And so actually the reason why I list it like that is because that latter thing is probably the role I would do to try and make my team win. Because what I would do is I'd have like, well, first of all, if I ever picked a team, the first person I would pick would not be the superstar. It would be the in-game leader. I'll make sure I've got someone who I think he has the right approach. He thinks about the game well. He breaks down opponents. And then I'd put my team together based on what type of team would fit his skill set. Okay, so once I've done that, and I've got a couple of stars, got my in-game leader, I've got my team players, I've got people who all work together, then I don't have to worry about like, oh, and then do this on this round, guys, and no, this team plays like that. They can figure all that stuff out, right? That's actually the part that they'll be really good at if you have the right mix. So instead, all I would spend my time doing is like structuring their schedule every day. Like for start off, I wouldn't let people ever play more than 6 hours of Counter-Strike in a day. As in, they'll never play more than 6 hours total. Like they could have like a set period that's like, I'll exclude like warm up, like they can play some CSDM before, or if they want to play for fun with people, they can play afterwards. But in terms of actual practice, I'd have a set time, because I think that like the problem now isn't that people don't practice enough. It's that either the practice is too streaky, like they have a set time, but then they don't get enough scrims within that period, or they just play during the 6 hours. So they play the scrims, but they don't do it in like a structured way. So I think what we need is more structure. We don't need more hours in the game. It's not like a Korean thing, like you have to play 12 hours of StarCraft. You just need to use your time better. And if you use your time the right way, not only will it ensure that you get your game to a really high level and you keep it consistent, but the key thing is then you can start to figure out how to peak for events. Because that's one of the things people in CS, like people will get really mad when I say this, okay. But okay, Forrest and Get Right and these players who played CS for like 8 years or something, they don't know how to peak for events. They think peaking for an event means play as much as you can, then right before the event, play even more. In fact, play your max amount, play as much as you can, try every strategy, then just go into the tournament, right? There will have been tournaments in the past where I can bet this, they might not have known it at the time, but they were burned out before they even played the first round. And listen, maybe they're so good, they still place top 3. Maybe they even fucking won the tournament, like when they had that streak of winning every tournament. But one of the things that we learned from like Fatality's career or some of the Brood War players is that you have to actually have a structure where it's like, okay, the event I really want to win is DreamHack Winter, okay? So rather than attend every event before, I think if I attend these two with this gap between, and I start practicing like a little bit before this event, then I have certain things I try there, then I build it up to the next event, then like maybe a week out, 2 weeks out from the big event, that's when I start ramping my practice up. And not only that, I'm even fitting stuff in like, okay, at the event, we're probably going to have a break at 2 o'clock for lunch. So we're going to make it so every day we have lunch at like 1:30, 2 o'clock. We're not going to have lunch at like 11 and then go to the event and suddenly we're all really hungry and we have to play. You see what I mean? Like, I'm not even doing anything like revolutionary here. I'm just setting up things so that the ideal scenario is that the main tournament is when we're playing our most and everything's going to be how it is in our normal lives. That's real practice because I'm practicing for the tournament, not just the game, you know. So I think that's the main thing that you could bring to the West, especially in somewhat like CSGO, where you don't have to do anything with their skills, but you would elevate the whole game. Because now it's not just can you play like your A game and win the tournament. I'm going to make it so like my B and my C game are still pretty high, where I could still potentially win.
All right. Thanks very much for all your thoughts, Thorin. I think that's the end for it now. Do you have anything closing to say? Any thoughts you want to share with us?
Yeah, I know a lot about CS, so if you think I do, then keep listening. If not, then don't.
Good stuff. Well, I'm certainly going to enjoy watching you on the Invitational that's going to be very soon. So thanks very much again, and bye-bye.